say. Life's a tune today, Brentocast all the way. Family stories roll, laughs and heart on roll.
Well, Virtual Mr. Magic, here we are. We have arrived at episode 66 of Brentocast. And I'm finally starting to feel like there is a plan and a direction for this podcast.
Whatever do you mean, Johnny Brento?
Well, obviously, the first episodes of the show were all over the place, to say the least. Personal updates, rants, music projects, week to week, what I've been up to sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Old school, off-the-cuff chat like I learned from you back in our old days of filmmaking.
Oh, yes. Total do now. When a video camera gets put in your face, I have definitely been blessed with the gift of gab or mic skills, as WWE fans used to call them. I know exactly what you mean. So what's the new direction you're talking about?
Well, about 8 months ago, I backed this Kickstarter for a werewolf graphic novel set in the Old West. Actually, the way it was pitched to me was werewolves versus gunslingers, which, needless to say, got me really excited. So a friend of mine was doing the art for it, and I decided to go ahead and just kick in at the maximum. So I bought a level of something we'll call the Big Daddy Wolf level. It was $333.
What the what? $333 for a graphic novel? Jay-Z, that is steep.
Well, yeah, it is, but let me explain. You get a lot. You get a hardbound version of it, the graphic novel, and some cool perks like a 3D printed werewolf figure, which the illustrator actually painted. A werewolf mini bust, sort of looks like the head of Lon Chaney's Kane and the Wolfman. A silver werewolf pin and a T-shirt with the cover of the artwork from the graphic novel or the actual comic on the shirt. But the real reason that I backed this project was that my friend illustrated it. And he had some severe health issues that he was ultimately able to work through over about a year and a half, really without any support from his family. And, I wanted to contribute to his success, making a living doing what he loves. And, so I don't really stress the 500% markup on this stuff over, say, if I bought it in a comic shop and Amazon. I did it to sort of help out. And I was legitimately excited about the project itself.
Dang, son, for that kind of money, the book better be gold-plated and bound in human skin.
It's actually funny that you mentioned gold plating because one of the stretch goals was to have the edges of the pages sort of coated in silver, which they did. Again, the merch was great quality. This guy that runs these is probably known for running the most efficient, most responsive Kickstarters, at least that I've encountered. Clearly, it's what he does for a living, and it really shows. He had all these dope kinds of live streams and discussions, nerd discussions, if you will. I watched a lot of those and really enjoyed them. Really got caught up in the whole thing. So I even won a piece of art, by the way, watching one of the live streams where the illustrator did a live sketch of a werewolf. Haven't received that yet, but I'm sure I will. But anyway, the campaign wound up raising over $23,000, which is amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. So if everything arrived and was so great, what's the problem?
I really hate to even express it, and that's part of the reason why I'm not using the name of the actual project. I still wish them well, and I don't want to discourage anybody from buying it. But, they really went above and beyond trying to include Native American advisors and that sort of thing too. So there's so many things that I admire about the actual project that. It really hurts me to have to critique it the way that I have to, but, the writing really, really had major issues for me. I don't know how else to put that.
Like what?
I feel like such a hater, but given my storytelling background with the filmmaking and whatnot and my real-world script writing experience, I can't unnotice what I see that is wrong and broken about the actual writing. The hero is an adulterous homewrecker. The rules of the werewolf in the story are just poorly defined, and the ones that are defined are not strictly adhered to. The one rule they do establish about silver being the only effective weapon against the werewolf, which of course is genre-wide, is ignored by the protagonist even after he's seen its effectiveness to his ultimate peril. The only interesting setup they have is where the protagonist is given a silver star and a revolver, obviously to melt down the star to coat the bullets to shoot the werewolves, right? That is never paid off, and they never refer to that again. It's like they forgot about it because they were getting close to the minimum page count. And that sucks from a consumer perspective. I understand how that happened because probably the artist, put in, hey, this is what I have to do it. And on that note, he probably figured this, I'll do this level for this amount. And then when more money came, he probably was like, well, I could just give him what I said I'd give him and not worry about like doing like the next level of detail or whatever. But, the writing could have at least been held to a higher standard because like at page 98, it literally just falls off a cliff, and they do a story narrative kind of a format, where it's just text and just a couple tiny pictures, like if you were reading a regular book, not a comic book. And that's how they try to wrap it up, but it seems like an afterthought. The story really feels like it's supposed to be in 3-act structure, and the third act just never really happens. It kind of gets started, it just never happens. It just stops. So it really felt like I followed this along, and then got abandoned kind of by the writer a little bit.
Well, that certainly is unfortunate. I guess they had their eyes on meeting that 100-page goal a bit too much. We've seen movies that do basically the same thing in the festivals I run. They meet that 90-minute feature minimum and wrap things up and get the heck out of Dodge. All that said, a graphic novel is a visual format. How did the art look?
That's another issue, too. I know this guy going back 21 years. I've been to his home studio. He's been to my place. I know his modeling work, his texturing work, his canvas painting work, and his comic work. His abilities are absolutely mind-blowing and off the chart. When he wants to impress, he totally has the tools to do it.
I sense a butt coming.
Well, for the big old badonkadonk, I have known him to phone things in when he gets in a time crunch. As a dedicated lazy person myself, he can get lazy. And I think that might not have been what happened here. I was really thinking it over. I was like, they probably came to him and said, what will you charge us to do 100 pages? He's like, well, I got all this going on. I can do 100 pages for this. Then, of course, they're like, great, we love your work. And he gives them some stuff to start it, and he starts on it. And then it's all designed for if the Kickstarter becomes funded, which is kind of a minimum level. And, of course, it was like $11,000 or something like that. It wasn't like it wasn't even that much. It was a couple grand. And so once that was exceeded, basically they're all just happy because they're getting to actually take home a check for doing their passion, right? They're not worried about trying to like extend it too much as far as their input. And so because he didn't have to do that next level of detail, he didn't. So one thing, and I kind of gently brought this up in one of the live streams talking to him, I was like, hey, so do you establish like a character design for the werewolves and the characters that you sort of look at when you draw the other ones? He's like, oh, no, I just kind of wing it. And that you can see that. The werewolves... the transformations, the werewolf design, the look and feel, the werewolves change. One of the big things that irked me about it the comic stopping at 98, is there's either 4 or 6 pages that are just full page pieces where it's like a big werewolf, but he's not in the same style as the werewolves in the story, but a big werewolf and sort of the protagonist standing in front of him. Both of them are looking at the camera sort of cheesy like, and it's like, that's not really a part of the comic strip, if you will. It's like just an add-in page. But they counted that off that 100 pages, and I really wanted 100 pages of the comic, to be honest. That's what I thought I was getting. So it kind of bums me out that he did it, and the art is somewhere between pretty cool and substandard. It never becomes amazing. And the thing is, I have seen so much of his work that is absolutely amazing, that I know he can do that. And I think it was one of them financial things, that probably happened, that probably made this come out this way. And it kind of bums me because, well, as cool as it was, it could have been cooler. But, I don't know where that puts me on following this other organizer's Kickstarters or not. I'll have to think about it in the future, just knowing that might happen. But it is what it is, man. It's like, yeah, it is what it is, as they say.
I hear you. So what does this have to do with the new direction for the podcast?
And they said there was no reason to have a virtual co-host. I'm so glad you asked. So it's easy for me to sit here and crap on somebody else's hard work. And as it so happens, I still like the project. But I have had this concept for my very own werewolf story in the pipe for years. And actually, I've even discussed it with this illustrator friend of mine. In short, I think I can write a better werewolf story. And I also believe that I can turn that novel into a 3D comic that looks at least as good as this comic provided to me. I don't know if I would make a Kickstarter out of that. Obviously, it doesn't cost me what it costs them to put it together, and I'm not as interested in a hardbound copy of it or a physical copy of it. Although, if I could get to a certain level, that might be something that I would explore. Personally, I prefer digital comics just for my own, how I read comics and whatnot. I prefer to have a digital copy. In fact, I've never actually read the book as the book over there, and I'm going to do that because I need to give it a second read through. The bummer is that when I try to talk to my friend about this, basically he just was real dismissive and didn't want to discuss it. And I completely get that. He's got his paycheck. He's moved on to the next thing. He's probably done 2 things since then. I get that. But that said, I had things I needed to express, and that's why I'm here talking to you, Mr. Virtual Magic. So this bold new direction for the podcast is I want to start sharing my artistic endeavors in a more specific way where, for example, I just told you I'm going to do this novel and 3D comic that looks at least as good as this book that I've got. And I want to share that behind the scenes, the whole process. Here's the concepts. For example, this week I've tried to put all of my concepts for this into a file in something called Google Notebook, LM Notebook. Look up Google LM Notebooks and you'll find it yourself. And you basically can just assemble all your resources and sort of start writing, get your outline put together with that, and then sort of have a little podcast made of it where these 2 virtual hosts talk about it, and it sort of bounces your own ideas back off of you. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing. When I get that further along, I might actually share that. I've shared those before here on the podcast, but that is basically the plan. Instead of just giving you updates and just chit-chatting about what I've done that week or that month since the last podcast, I want to start actually working toward actively producing things that I've been thinking about doing for a while. Might be an album, might be a song, might be a book.
That sounds cool.
On that note, Mr. Virtual Magic, I think you have another chapter of The Things in the Woods to read, don't you?
Indeed I do. So without further ado, here's this week's installment of The Things in the Woods by S. Brent Bowers. Chapter 3, The Disappearance. Morning light and shadows. Morning sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, barely permeating the thick shadows that had blanketed the forest throughout the long night. The diffused golden rays seemed almost reluctant to pierce the darkness, offering minimal warmth or solace after the exhausting and fruitless hours of searching. The forest extended in an interminable maze of trees and undergrowth. As the minutes dragged on, the weight of fatigue descended heavily upon the group, exacerbating their sense of disorientation. After hours of futile searching, John's friends reconvened at the camp. Exhaustion etched across their expressions. Their postures were slumped, their eyes hollow with worry and sleep deprivation, each carrying an air of defeated helplessness. A heavy silence hung between them until Jenny finally gave voice to the collective question that weighed upon them all. A desperate plan. What do we do now? Should we try to get help? Her voice trembled, her eyes rimmed with red from crying. She clutched the straps of her backpack as though clinging to something tangible could anchor her amidst the growing turmoil. Danny crouched near the cold remnants of the fire pit, idly prodding the ashes with a stick. The embers had long since extinguished, leaving only a pile of gray soot that seemed to mirror the hopelessness engulfing him. I don't know, he said, his voice hoarse. Part of me wants to just get the hell back to the car, but we don't even know which direction John went. He could be anywhere. Maybe we could check out the tent village John mentioned, Mike interjected, his eyes darting nervously around the forest, as though expecting something to emerge from the shadows. His voice was tight, barely concealing the fear that gripped him. We might pick up his trail there, or at least find some answers. Sarah nodded slowly, the movement deliberate. It's not much of a lead, but it's better than wandering aimlessly. Though her voice lacked conviction, there was a flicker of determination in her gaze. She glanced at Jenny, who nodded in agreement, her lips pressed together into a thin, resolute line into the unknown. With grim resolve, they began to repack their gear. The familiar routine provided a semblance of comfort amid the uncertainty. Zipping bags, tightening straps, each methodical action was a small act of defiance against the creeping dread. As they set off along the narrow trail, the forest presence grew increasingly oppressive. The once serene woods now bore an air of malice, with every rustle and creak echoing an unseen threat. Sarah's eyes scanned the surroundings incessantly, searching for any sign of John or whatever might have taken him. Yet there was nothing, only the sighing of the wind through the leaves and the muffled crunch of their footsteps. Time seemed to stretch. Their anxiety mounted with each passing minute. The air was thick with an almost tangible tension, and they delved deeper into the woods as it felt as though the forests were closing in on them, swallowing them whole. The trees appeared to lean closer, their gnarled branches casting skeletal shadows that danced across the ground in grotesque patterns. Occasionally a bird would take flight, startled by their approach, the sudden motion making Jenny flinch as her nerves frayed further with every step. The clearing. After what felt like an eternity, they stumbled upon a small clearing. At its center stood a cluster of large tents, weathered and abandoned, their canvas torn in places and flapping listlessly in the breeze. The scene matched John's description exactly, down to the eerie stillness that hung over the clearing, as though time itself had paused. The group moved cautiously between the tents, peering into each one, their breaths held in anticipation. The silence pressed in on them, broken only by the sound of their breathing and the occasional rustling of fabric. It was Jenny who cried out first, "Oh my God, over there, I see him." The others rushed to her side, their hearts pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. John lay curled up inside one of the tents, utterly motionless. His face was pallid, his eyes closed, his body unnaturally still. For a harrowing moment, they feared the worst. Mike dropped to his knees, his hands trembling as he gently shook John's shoulder. A horrifying discovery. "Hey, John, can you hear me? What happened?" For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then abruptly, John's eyes flew open, revealing pupils so dilated they swallowed the light, appearing as solid pools of black. An unnatural snarl erupted from his throat, a guttural feral sound that seemed wholly disconnected from anything human. It was primal, raw, filled with a fury that sent a jolt of terror through everyone. Jenny screamed, stumbling back into Sarah, who tightened her grip on her friend. "What's wrong with him?" Jenny whimpered, her voice barely a whisper, her body trembling. She could feel Sarah's heart pounding against her, matching her own frantic rhythm. Before Sarah could respond, her gaze was drawn to a movement at the periphery of the clearing. Dark shapes emerged from the tree line, their forms shifting with an eerie fluidity between the shadows. One by one, the figures stepped into the clearing, revealing faces that were pallid and gaunt, eyes hollow and devoid of life, and lips pulled back to expose sharp, glistening fangs. Their clothes hung loose, tattered and stained, as though they had been wandering these woods for centuries, forgotten by time. The encirclement. "Vampires?" Mike breathed, his voice barely audible, as though speaking the word aloud might lend it an irrefutable reality. His eyes were wide with terror, his face drained of color. He glanced at Danny, who appeared equally stricken, his knuckles white as he gripped the handle of his flashlight like a makeshift weapon. The creatures moved with an unsettling deliberation, tightening their circle around the campsite. Their eyes remained fixed on the group, predatory and unwavering. As though following some unspoken command, they all threw their heads back in unison, unleashing a chilling howl that reverberated through the clearing, vibrating through the earth itself. The sound pierced the stillness, sending a shiver through Sarah's very core, a sound of hunger and of inevitability, of triumph, as if they were announcing the grim fate of their prey. A desperate escape. Panic surged through Sarah, her heart hammering in her chest. Her thoughts a chaotic blur. She tightened her hold on Jenny, pulling her close, her eyes darting around for any possible means of escape. The clearing that had once seemed a place of hope now felt like an inescapable trap, with the dark figures closing in from every direction. She knew with a cold certainty, settling like lead in her stomach, that whatever lay ahead, it would lead them through the very depths of hell. Danny took a hesitant step back, his voice quivering as he spoke. We have to move now. We can't stay here. He turned his eyes frantically, scanning the clearing for any opening, any gap in the tightening circle of creatures. He grabbed a fallen branch from the ground, holding it before him like a crude weapon. Mike nodded, his breath coming in ragged bursts. Yeah, we have to fight our way out or we're dead. He glanced at John, who was still snarling, his eyes vacant and animalistic, and a pang of fear and sorrow gripped Mike's heart. Whatever happened to John, whatever transformation had taken place, he was no longer the friend they knew. The vampires moved closer, their fangs glinting in the dim morning light. Jenny bared her face into Sarah's shoulder, her body convulsing. Please, Sarah, she whispered, we have to get out of here. We can't let them take us. Sarah swallowed hard, her throat dry, her mind racing. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet the paralyzing fear threatened to root her in place. But she knew she couldn't let it end like this, not without a fight. She looked at Danny and Mike, meeting their terrified gazes, and nodded. We stick together, she said, her voice somehow steady despite the terror clawing at her insides. We're getting out of here. We fight if we have to, but we're not giving up. A low, menacing growl echoed through the clearing as the vampires inched closer, their movements exuding a predatory patience. The air grew thick with the scent of decay, a foul reminder of the creature's inhuman nature. Sarah's eyes darted to the edge of the clearing, catching sight of a narrow gap between two of the tents, a slim hope, but nonetheless. She took a deep breath, her pulse thundering in her ears. There, she shouted, pointing toward the gap. Run! Without another word, she grabbed Jenny's hand and bolted, the others following close behind. Their feet pounded against the forest floor, harsh racing as they sprinted toward their only hope of escape. The vampires lunged, their howls reverberating through the clearing like a chorus of death, but Sarah didn't dare look back. She kept her focus on the narrow opening ahead, the thought of survival, and propelling her forward. As they both broke through the gap, the forest seemed to come alive. Branches clawed at their clothing. Roots threatened to trip them. The woods, once a place of refuge, had become a dark, twisted labyrinth, intent on holding them captive. Yet they ran, driven by the primal need to survive, the unearthly howls of their pursuers echoing through the trees, urging them deeper into the unknown.